We begin inside a bunker, where we see Chloe, covered in blood, Oleg, and another man. They are all running for their lives while a voice on the loudspeaker announces that the lockdown will begin in 60 seconds. Suddenly, Oleg stops and shoots the other man, and before he can shoot Chloe as well, he only hits her leg. Then, Oleg leaves the bunker, and the door closes before Chloe can follow him. Hearing a growling nearby, Chloe begins to backtrack through the tunnel and manages to slide under the closing door just in time. However, the other man gets trapped and grabs Chloe's legs, begging her not to leave him behind. At that moment, a monster appears from the other side and drags the man away, allowing the door to close completely. After that, Chloe finds a computer and sends a distress message. She explains that the facility is under attack, that it has been placed on lockdown for 24 hours, and that she is the only survivor. If anyone wants Adam and the research, they must rescue her. Then, Chloe cleans her wound and removes the bullet. She also sanitizes herself and takes some new clothes from the lockers. Hearing the growl again, she decides to hide behind some furniture. The source of the growl is a deformed, eyeless humanoid creature. The monster enters the room and approaches the woman, but upon seeing her blood-stained face, it does not attack her. Meanwhile, the mercenary James receives a video call from his pregnant wife, who becomes upset upon seeing him dressed for the mission as he should be returning home. James explains that he took on a special operations mission and promises that this will be the last one for a while since the payment is high enough for a good house. Then, James and his best friend Marshall board a plane with Marshall's ex-girlfriend, who is also a mercenary, Rachel. During the flight, Rachel explains the details. They need to enter a bio-research laboratory in Bosvania to rescue Chloe without being detected. Oleg's team has already tried to enter the bunker, resulting in 12 civilian deaths, and now these soldiers are in the area trying to find another entrance. The mercenaries also have teams on the ground that have already found 2 escape tunnels. So Rachel will join Team Alpha to enter the facility, while James and Marshall must join Bravo to provide cover. A helicopter will pick them up later. Upon arriving in the forest, James and Marshall see one of Oleg's men searching for an entrance with a metal detector. When the guy spots them, he takes off running, and a chase begins. The man tries to hide behind a tree, but the rest of Team Bravo quickly finds him. The team wants to kill him, but James opts to tie him to a tree. The prisoner keeps repeating that the Nephilims are coming, but James thinks it's nonsense. Bravo leaves, leaving the man tied to the tree. Meanwhile, Team Alpha uses a small explosive to make a hole and enter the bunker. They find an injured man against the wall, and when he turns, he reveals a face in the process of mutation. Suddenly, the man lunges at them and the team opens fire, but it isn't enough to stop him, and he sends one mercenary flying. In the forest, Team Bravo discovers that their prisoner has escaped. Then a bomb explodes nearby, causing them to run for cover and shoot back as Oleg's men fire at them. One team member is immediately killed, and another is severely injured. Bombs continue to explode in the area, and Marshall is knocked down, but he quickly recovers and keeps shooting, only to find himself pinned down behind a tree. James is also knocked down by a bomb, so he drags himself across the ground to retrieve his weapon and runs between the trees to take out the last enemies and save Marshall. He also encounters the earlier prisoner, and this time doesn't hesitate to shoot him in the head. Afterward, James and Marshall help their injured companion, but they hear more enemies approaching, so they hide him after providing medical assistance. Then, they take shelter and notice Oleg's men finding their other companion, who is actually not dead and is being shot repeatedly by the enemy. Then, Oleg's group brings in a dog to search for them, so Marshall has no choice but to shoot the handler. Another battle ensues, and the duo eliminates as many men as possible while running through the forest. Soon they run out of bullets, and more explosions detonate nearby, so their only option is to jump off a cliff and fall into the water. The strong current pushes the duo for a while. James manages to cling to a rock and notices a waterfall, becoming worried about Marshall, who appears swimming nearby. They reach back to land and sneak in to find the meeting point, but do not see Team Alpha nearby. An argument begins as Marshall wants to wait for the extraction as planned, but James believes Oleg will find them soon. At that moment, distant barking is heard, so Marshall agrees to hide in a cave. The duo is forced to crawl through narrow tunnels until they reach an open area, where they become excited to find an entrance beneath some rocks. They quickly remove the stones and enter the bunker. At the same time, Oleg and Jonah find the injured mercenary and beat him while asking where the entrance to the bunker is. Suddenly, a body bag starts to move, and Oleg shoots it before making the mercenary open it. Inside, There is a monster, which Oleg sets on fire while explaining that this is the reason they can't let anyone enter the laboratory. Inside the bunker, James and Marshall wander and find blood everywhere, but no bodies. There are some weapons and bullets on the ground that they take before continuing their search. In another room, they find a pile of photographs showing Chloe and a monster in the snow. After taking pictures with his cell phone, James plays a recording of a scientist explaining that they recovered the body of Subject N from a glacier. They used the monster's blood on humans, but it acted like a parasite and attacked people's DNA. Some of the scientists believed the monster was something from the Bible that they shouldn't have awakened. Marshall doesn't understand, so James tells him about the fallen angels who abused human women, resulting in the birth of very strong monsters known as Nephilims. These monsters waged war against humans, and humanity nearly went extinct, but then Noah built the ark to save them, and the flood supposedly killed all the Nephilims. At that moment, they hear some growling, and James goes to investigate. Sensing a presence behind him, he walks down the corridor and enters another room. After hearing more strange noises coming from the ventilation duct, James sees Chloe behind some furniture and talks to her. She warns him that the monsters are attracted to sounds, but it's already too late. One appears above them and throws James to the ground, making him drop his weapon. Then the monster positions itself on top of James and repeats his words in a voice that sounds like a growl. Before it can attack, Chloe appears from behind and hits it with an axe. When the monster turns to her, Marshall appears and begins to shoot. The bullets do not wound it, and the monster escapes through the duct. Many growls can be heard in the ducts, and Chloe tells the duo that they need to get out before the monster finds them again. The trio runs back to the entrance, but freeze upon discovering Oleg's group has arrived. They try to go back through the same corridor, only to see the monster blocking the way. As the beast approaches, Chloe notices another ventilation duct, and the trio immediately jumps into it. They crawl as fast as they can, while Chloe sees the monster below them. The group freezes to avoid making noise, however. Marshall accidentally turns on the recorder. He quickly turns it off, but the monster has already heard them and reaches the duct, grabbing James's foot. Chloe and Marshall continue until they reach a room, where James shoots the monster, causing it to release its grip. James then joins the others in the room, where Chloe is vomiting. The soldiers demand an explanation, so Chloe tells them that the scientists used Subject N's blood to create a genetic hybrid called Adam, who was part human and part monster. Then James suggests they should leave through the other entrance. However, Chloe emphasizes that this is the area where Adam started everything. Over 20 employees were infected and became the monsters they are now fighting. James remembers that the map shows a third tunnel, so they need to find it to escape. After Chloe vomits again, the trio leaves the room. They sneak around and find another duct. While James works to open it, Chloe continues explaining. Adam was the first successful hybrid created 30 years ago from an embryo and was brought here for containment, but he became unstable due to the experiments done on him and got out of control. James finally opens the duct, but before they can exit, they are found by one of Oleg's men. The group tells him to keep his voice down, but the man doesn't listen, so his voice quickly attracts a monster that easily kills him in seconds. The trio seizes the chance to enter the duct and crawl away. Chloe tells the guys that Oleg was the guardian of the laboratory, but even so, he killed Adam. Now, Oleg wants to turn Adam's research into a weapon, which is in his hands. Eventually, the trio exits the duct and follows the pipes to a machine room. They cross a very narrow door, and, while searching for the next access, James's watch beeps, announcing that the lockdown is over. The trio crosses another door that they lock behind them and follows a corridor until they find Rachel, who is gravely injured. On the security cameras, Chloe notices that the enemy is approaching. Marshall tries to take Rachel with them, but Chloe says she is infected and there is no cure. When Marshall refuses to leave her behind, Chloe points out where he can find the infirmary to get a stretcher. While Marshall goes to the infirmary and James searches for the next entrance, Chloe seizes the chance to shoot Rachel in the head. The guys return when they hear the shot, and Marshall is furious, ignoring Chloe when she argues that she saved Rachel from suffering as a monster. Marshall yells at Chloe and threatens to kill her, but James stops him. All this noise attracts the attention of the monster, which soon appears at the door. Then Marshall and James start shooting at it in vain. As they run out of bullets, the group flees and accidentally gets separated while the monster chases them. James and Chloe hide in an infirmary, where a body immediately begins to move and roar. Chloe covers the creature's face with a pillow, and James hands her his knife so she can kill the infected. Meanwhile, Marshall arrives at the morgue and decides to hide inside a freezer next to a body. At that moment, James contacts him, and Marshall hears the monster attempt to enter the infirmary. James and Chloe do their best to keep the door closed while Marshall tries to get out to help them, but he discovers that the freezer door cannot be opened from the inside. Suddenly, the body wakes up and bites Marshall on the arm, so he uses his knife to stab it repeatedly in the head until he kills it again. Marshall thinks it's over, but Jonah pulls him out and hits him with his weapon. At the same time, James and Chloe manage to close the door and the monster backs away, but they also hear Oleg's men's voices approaching. James throws the recorder into the hallway and two men get distracted. Then he seizes the opportunity to attack. He immediately takes down one guy, but the other is bigger and overpowers him. Luckily, Chloe appears and uses a knife to fight the big man, showing surprising skill as she stabs him at key points until he is dead. After that, James wants to go out looking for Marshall, but Chloe stops him. She points out that if Oleg gets the research, he will turn it into a weapon and kill them all. James has no choice but to accompany Chloe out first. In the morgue, Marshall is tied to a table while Jonah describes how the infection will kill him and turn him into a Nephilim. He keeps asking where Adam is, and Marshall says he doesn't know, before suddenly having a vision. He sees Adam killing the scientists and chasing Oleg outside before recording the message. This means that Chloe is actually Adam, and Oleg has been fighting to stop her. Returning to James and Chloe, they manage to reach Adam's room and find the body of Team Alpha's leader, which makes Chloe feel nauseous. James tries to contact Marshall, who is about to be stabbed by Jonah. At that moment, a monster bursts into the morgue, and Jonah turns to shoot, but the monster grabs him and throws him aside before lunging at Marshall to kill him. Once Jonah is dead, the monster examines Marshall more closely, but since he is infected, the beast spares him and leaves. Marshall then uses his knife to free himself. In Adam's room, James hands Chloe the dead man's cell phone and tells her to exit through the tunnel Team Alpha used. Once she is outside, she can use the phone to call the helicopter. James prepares to go out to help Marshall, but freezes upon seeing a crib in the corner. He realizes that Chloe is vomiting because she is pregnant and demands to know the true story. Chloe admits she is Adam, explaining that she lost control after being imprisoned for 30 years. She refused to raise her baby in captivity, so she killed her captors to finally have freedom. James understands the desire to save the child, but Chloe's blood is too dangerous, and he doesn't want to let her out. Suddenly, a monster enters the room, and Chloe merely watches as James is easily beaten. At that moment, Marshall arrives and threatens to shoot Chloe, and the monster releases James. Chloe runs away and turns off the lights, while Marshall opens fire, only to be knocked down by the monster. James finds a flamethrower left by the soldiers and uses it to burn the monster until it dies. Meanwhile, Chloe reaches the outside and finds Oleg waiting for her with his weapon drawn. Chloe apologizes for her actions and approaches to hug him, but Oleg does not forgive her. A desperate Chloe steals his knife and stabs him, only for Oleg to take it back quickly and stab her in return. As they both fall to the ground, James and Marshall also exit the bunker. They check on Chloe, and she suddenly attacks, stabbing James before fighting with Marshall. Chloe's monstrous strength allows her to quickly take down Marshall, and when James tries to fight her too, he is instantly defeated in the same manner. Neither gives up and attempts to fight Chloe again. However, it is easy for her to knock them down, one after the other. She then tries to grab a fallen weapon, so James surprises her from behind, putting a rope around her neck. Chloe fights in his grip and manages to stab James in the eye to distract him, then knocks him down. She then attempts to stab him, but James painfully catches the knife with his hand. As Marshall begins to transform, he uses that strength to pull the rope before jumping to the opening, dragging Chloe along the ground until she suffocates. After this, James descends through the opening to save his friend, but Marshall reminds him that he is infected and tells him to leave without him. After a final goodbye, James leaves the bunker and lies on the ground to use the phone. He passes out before he can hear his wife's voice. Later that night, a rescue team arrives in the forest and finds James, who has already transformed, and immediately attacks them.